It's the top of the hour. Here's what you need to know this morning.
At least 6 people, there was a guy shot in the leg. One female was surrounded by people helping her out. The other one was doing CPR.
Breaking overnight, a deadly shootout at a food festival in Seattle, Washington. At least 3 people were killed, and police say a toddler was also caught in that crossfire. And new this morning, we're learning at least 1 person has been taken into police custody.
As the president said, we are locked and loaded. Even more assets are going into theater, but he's giving talk some space. He's giving it a little bit of room.
This morning, the president is said to be weighing his options on Iran as the 2 countries have held off on strikes over the weekend. The White House is pausing its bombing campaign reportedly after advisors said they were running out of targets and running low on weapons. And happening today, President Trump heads to Michigan ahead of next week's primary in the Wolverine state. We're just 99 days to the midterms. The White House says he will focus on jobs in manufacturing and the auto industry. Right now, Michigan has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick Smith. It's Monday, July 27th. Thank you so much for waking up with us. Shifting now to Iran, where for a 3rd straight night, the United States and Iran did not exchange fire. The pause in fighting comes after nearly 2 straight weeks of U.S. strikes. But it wasn't a completely quiet weekend in the Middle East. Ukraine launched an attack on an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea that killed 1 sailor. Iran says the attack cannot go unanswered. For more, let's bring in retired Air Force Brigadier General John Teichert to help us break this down. General Teichert, where do things stand right now? Because we're seeing the fighting, paused for the United States and Iran, but now we have Ukraine jumping into the mix.
Nick, I do think it's interesting to add that dimension to this conflict. And there are 2 meetings tomorrow in the White House that are interesting. One with Zelensky from Ukraine, one with Netanyahu from Israel. And I think it is intriguing and interesting that now Zelensky believes that this is an opportune time for him to ingratiate himself with the president of the United States by doing something to help the theater in the Middle East by striking that target in the Caspian Sea.
How important is that? Because you heard the United States call out many of our European partners for not assisting, but here's Ukraine out of nowhere saying, hey, I got your back, Mr. Trump.
It was a surprise to me as I saw that Ukraine was willing to take this step. And of course, there's a little bit of risk for them that now they're in the crosshairs from Iran. But I do think Zelensky is playing a strategic move here in that he's going to see the president. He's doing something that even our NATO partners would not do. And now maybe this puts him in a stronger bargaining position to maybe get commitments from the United States for the long term for Ukraine.
And it can't be lost that he's still fighting with Russia.
He is now 4.5 years in. The United States has had various levels of support in that conflict, but now I think Zelensky sees an opportunity to seal the deal for long-term U.S. support.
General Teichert, you also talked about the meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. What is the Israeli prime minister looking for from Mr. Trump?
Right now, Netanyahu would love to see the United States finish the job. The president has said that he would, but we continue to focus on military targets and military strikes without necessarily mapping those strikes to achieving our strategic objectives. And I think hopefully Netanyahu will convince the president of the United States that it's time to take a step back, reassess our strategy, and do something more strategic with our military assets than we've done in the last 4.5 to 5 months.
We just heard Republican Congressman Thomas Massie say that, hey, we're running out of ammo, and this is an issue. Is he right? Are we running out of ammo? What is the situation right now?
So I think there's a concern about both offensive capabilities, weapons to strike, and defensive capabilities, the weapons to protect ourselves. And my concern is strategically for the long term, number one, we don't have enough domestic capacity to replenish our stocks quickly. I think the Secretary of War's Arsenal of Freedom tour is trying to rectify that. But then number two, we've got to take a step back, like I said, and not use thousands of munitions, but use munitions that have the most effect. And if we do that, then we can maybe achieve our strategic objectives.
And Axios is reporting that Admiral Brad Cooper, who is the top military commander in the Middle East, recommended stopping the bombing campaign around the Strait of Hormuz because it had, quote, reached the limit of its effectiveness.
and that we're running out of munitions, he said. And I think the concern is that if we don't use munitions judiciously, then now we've used a lot without a lot of impact. And I hope that Admiral Cooper and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs are advising to the president that we need to reorient our bombing campaign to strike at the heart of the regime and not just a lot of military targets.
And General Tiger, what do you mean when you say we've run out of targets? Because Iran is a huge country. There has to be other things to strike, or that's not necessarily the case?
Well, there are always targets to strike, but I think the most important targets have been untouched, which are those strategic targets. And that includes centers of gravity for the regime or internal security hubs or some of those key energy and power nodes like Karg Island that have the most effect on the financing of the regime.
The fighting is paused for now, but Iran doesn't seem to be budging in negotiations, reportedly insisting on charging tolls to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Is there any world where that's allowed to happen? And if not, can talks move forward anyway?
I do not see any way that we could allow Iran to charge tolls, but I do go back to the first ceasefire at the beginning of April, where there was one and only one precondition, and that was Iran, no strings attached, opening up the Strait of Hormuz. They never followed through on that commitment, which gives me pause to think they would ever follow through on a negotiated settlement.
And has this recent conflict highlighted their ability to choke off that point of flow?
Not just them, but maybe other points of flow, other places in the world, other countries could consider, which is why what is going on here is a precedent-setting event for elsewhere, and we cannot allow Iran to choke this off because others may follow that playbook down the road.
Stop it now.
That's exactly right.
General Tiker, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
Meanwhile, President Trump will be in Michigan today for a big speech focusing on his America First economic agenda. But polls show voters are not sold on his handling of the economy, and it could cost Republicans control of Congress at the midterms. NewsNation Washington correspondent Corey Smith is outside the White House with the latest. Corey, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Nick. Yeah, look, the president's message, the question going into this trip is he going to stay on that message? You mentioned the polling as it relates to affordability and the economy. The poll numbers say that the country not doing so hot, but the president sees it differently, saying America is the hottest it's ever been. He's going to be in Milford, Michigan today at a General Motors facility ahead of next week's big primary in Michigan. Of course, the stakes high in the state with a vital Senate seat up for grabs. Now, from an economic standpoint, Nick, it is a mixed bag in Michigan. The unemployment rate at about 5%, among the highest in the country. The average price of a gallon of regular gas, $4.22. That's according to AAA. And of course, in Michigan, you got to talk about the auto industry, right? Well, it remains the top auto producer in the country, but the number of industry jobs is down from about 3,000 last year. Now, we expect the president to play all the usual hits, highlighting the one big beautiful bill, no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security. But we also expect him to talk about some of the major companies investing in Michigan since he returned to office, like OpenAI, Oracle, Corning, Stellantis, GE, GM, Ford, the list goes on. The White House says the administration has helped secure about $20 billion in investments in Michigan, creating more than 1,600 jobs there. They're also touting the president's tariffs as the reason some of these companies are investing here at home. But those same tariffs also causing some uncertainty this morning. Back on Friday, the president levied double-digit tariffs on 60 trading partners, and we know consumers could ultimately bear the brunt of those added costs. Meanwhile, Democrats in the state are hoping to seize on the affordability issue in that economic polling, but right now they are just really busy fighting one another. Let's take a look at some of the latest polling in this Democratic primary. You have Congresswoman Haley Stevens, the incumbent, with a 7-point lead over progressive Abdul El Sayed. Of course, the winner will go on to take on former Congressman Mike Rogers in November. Nick?
Hey, Corey, quick question. The president's visit comes on the same day that new bridge between the United States and Canada, that Gordie Howe Bridge, it opens up to traffic in Michigan after White House delays, and no one attended that ribbon-cutting ceremony. What can we expect?
Yeah, that's right. Look, this bridge was finished back in June. It connects Detroit with Windsor, Ontario. The White House, though, didn't like the terms of the revenue-sharing deal with Canada, so the opening was pushed back multiple times. Here's Premier Doug Ford.
Our relationship has been challenged over the last few years, and President Trump has threatened new tariffs just this month. But Team Canada has never been more united.
Now, as you mentioned, Nick, there was a big to-do scheduled for last Friday, but that joint celebration was ultimately canceled after the president slapped 50% tariffs on most Canadian goods. We'll see if he takes a few shots at our neighbors to the north while in Michigan today. Nick?
Corey Smith, live outside the White House. Corey, thank you so much. For more, let's bring in Alex Bolton, senior staff writer for our partners at thehill.com. Alex, good morning. The president's economic messaging has not been landing with voters. In a new CBS YouGov poll, 58% say President Trump's policies have made them worse off financially. Is this speech going to move the needle at all with voters?
It's hard to see how this speech is going to move the needle. This is a perennial problem of presidents. They think the economy is better than voters do, and it's very tough to convince voters what they feel on a daily basis when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas station. They know what their wages are, they know what they're paying, and so for the president to argue that things are better, than voters think they are, just doesn't move the needle, as you ask. And we saw this back in 2024. Joe Biden felt that the economy, and his advisors felt the economy was very good back then. And by the way, gas was cheaper back then. So we trying to convince voters that the economy is better than they think it is just doesn't have much of an impact. So I think that's why Trump has been, reluctant to stick to the economic messaging, despite all the urging by Republicans in Congress, by White House advisors. They say, look, talk more about the one big beautiful bill, which had a lot of, it extended the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. It had a lot of corporate tax breaks. And what we're seeing is that while in a state like Michigan, corporate taxes have gone down, and there are tax cuts from like no tax on tips, for example, Michiganders are paying more. They're paying more because of tariffs. They're paying more because of rising gas prices, rising food prices. And I think that's why the president's approval rating is so low generally, and also on his handling of the economy. So I think that's why Trump repeatedly goes back to the cultural touchstones that he's so good at talking about: illegal immigration. He's also made the Save America Act and securing elections. He had a big speech just a couple weeks ago about the vulnerability of our election systems, talking about defund the police. And so Michigan's a good place for him to go, because he can talk about the Democratic Socialist aligned candidate Abdul El Sayed, who's doing very well in the polls, and who can be hit on issues like defund the police, who can be hit on issues like calling Israel a rogue state, who can be hit on Medicare for all, the government takeover of healthcare. That's, I think, where Trump is likely to have more progress with voters than talking about the economy, which voters think just isn't that good.
And you mentioned how the Republicans would prefer him to stick to the economic messaging, because El Sayed has definitely mentioned about defunding the police. So we can expect the president to definitely play on that messaging, on that and other statements made by those who identify as DSA.
I mean, I think that's where the president wants to go. I don't know what's written. I'm sure the speech is very much focused on the economy, on the $20 billion investment that the Trump administration is touting for the state of Michigan. They're claiming 1,600 new jobs. They're talking about, no tax on tips for the working class voters in Michigan. So that's where they want the president to go. Will he stick to his teleprompter? Who knows? It's a question mark. He's unpredictable, but I think that he is going to want to hit those cultural issues. And I think with El Sayed as the candidate there, as the Democratic Socialist, I think that's going to be too tempting a target. I think he's going to go into those more political issues and stray from the economic ones, but we'll just have to see. This race has become a lot closer than people thought at the beginning of the cycle, this Michigan Senate race. They have a strong candidate, Mike Rogers, the former rep. He narrowly lost in 2024. Republicans are hoping El Sayed is the standard bearer so they can unleash that playbook of hammering, the socialist tendencies of some Democratic voters. So I think that's certainly what Trump would love to talk about in this election.
Alex Bolton with thehill.com. Alex, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Right now, we're following breaking news. 3 people dead and an urgent manhunt for a gunman after a shooting at a food festival in Seattle. 4 others are hurt, including a toddler. Police have not identified a motive, but say it appears that this was a shootout between a pair of gunmen firing at each other. Footage from the festival shows people running and dodging for cover. The shooting happening right near the world-famous Space Needle, and cell phone video shows people hiding and ducking for cover inside the gift shop. One suspect was arrested, but police say they are actively searching for a second one.
Thankfully, we had officers on the scene that were brave, went to those shots, and prevented more victims from being injured. Right now, we believe that we have no outstanding threat to the community. We do have one suspect that is being interviewed. We've recovered 2 guns. We believe that there were two people shooting at each other.
Seattle's assistant police chief hasn't given any details on the suspects, only saying that the person detained is a young person. Well, starting today, more than 300,000 Haitian immigrants are at risk of being deported after their temporary protection status is revoked. The controversy over the safety of their home country and the deportation efforts already reportedly in the works. Plus,
Zoran, you can't hide. We charge you with hate and lies.
New York City's mayor faces new fury from members of the Jewish community, why they say he's to blame for a spike in hate crimes in the Big Apple.
Every great day starts with your gut. Try new Dulcolax gummies for daily gut support. These stimulant-free magnesium gummies help your gut run smoothly. New Dulcolax gummies for daily gut support.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine.
Are you on Medicaid and in need of bladder control and incontinence products? Then stay tuned for a free offer from Active Style.
Can Medicaid help me with bladder control products?
At Active Style, we understand your needs and offer convenient home delivery of incontinence products for children and adults. And they may be available at no cost to you if you're Medicaid eligible. When you call a personal consultant, someone like me will help you find the best bladder control supplies for you. Our products have a super absorbent core that locks away wetness to keep you dry. And if the fit's not right, we'll send different products until you're completely satisfied. Plus, every order ships free right to your door in discreet boxes.
Active Style is a lifesaver.
If you're on Medicaid, call now for your free sample. Active Style is the easy, convenient way to get incontinence supplies shipped discreetly to your door at no cost to you.
Call 1-800-493-8560.
With Blackstone, you can cook anything, anytime, anywhere, anything. From weekend classics to weekday favorites, or whatever's on the menu. Anytime. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Anywhere. From your backyard to big open spaces all across America. With griddles and more at blackstoneproducts.com or your nearest retailer. Outdoor cooking happens on a Blackstone.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
Antenna TV has big news.
Where you get a load of this?
Your favorite classic TV network is now on Hulu. TV how it was meant to be, wherever you may be.
This is like home.
Over the air, on cable, and now streaming.
I'm so excited.
Only the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Antenna TV, available now on Hulu. Visit antennatv.tv for more information.
We're here because Mayor Mamdani has blood on his hands.
Protesters in New York City this weekend condemning Mayor Zoran Mamdani just days after two men were stabbed in a pair of alleged hate crimes. The suspect allegedly yelled "Allahu Akbar" as he stabbed the men. One of the victims was Jewish and had just left a synagogue. NewsNation national correspondent Marcus Espinosa is live in New York City with the latest. Marcus, what message do these protesters have for Mayor Mamdani?
Hey, Nick, good morning. Here's the thing. This is a city divided right now. You have the supporters of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani who are just 100% behind his vision and what he has campaigned on. And then you have others, and not just only Jewish New Yorkers, but others against his practices and policies. But many Jewish New Yorkers now blasting the mayor for what they call anti-Semitism in remarks he's made on air and on social media. Go ahead and listen to what they had to say at that rally.
We're here because we want to show the world and the mayor and the governor, we want to show that we will not be silenced. We will not cower in fear, regardless of what occurs on the streets.
So people attending the End Jewish Hate rally did not hold back or mince words in their criticism of the mayor. While many say they want more done to fight anti-Semitism, others want Mamdani out of office altogether. They blame his rhetoric for an increase in anti-Jewish hate crimes. Adding to the anger for some, Mamdani's call for Israel's prime minister to be arrested when he visits the UN in New York this September, declaring Netanyahu a war criminal, Mamdani is, and saying that he is not welcome. Meanwhile, the prime minister hitting back at Mamdani on Sunday.
And look at what he's doing. He's fomenting hate. He's supposed to be the mayor of all New Yorkers, Jews, Christians, Muslims, everyone. But he's trying to turn one group against the other, and he's foisting hate and fear.
So the PM is set to visit the White House on Tuesday and says he plans to attend that United Nations General Assembly in September. Those plans are unchanged. Mamdani later acknowledged the city has no legal power to arrest the prime minister. But Nick, just bringing you in here for a second, I can tell you since the election, I even interviewed a Jewish New Yorker who said they had concerns over Mamdani getting in office and that they were actually seeking out citizenship in Israel. Now, that's just one person. That's just one interview. I also talked to supporters of Mamdani who back him 1,000%. So it's very much a city divided on ideology right now. And you see both sides really fighting back, saying the other is responsible for what's taking place.
One thing is definitely true, Marcus. The mayor has not had any hesitation in taking controversial stances on issues. Marcus Espinosa in New York. Marcus, thank you. ICE officers may have new targets in their immigration crackdown, while hundreds of thousands of Haitians across the country could wind up in handcuffs and in line for deportation. Plus, a bacteria outbreak linked to lettuce growing and spreading this morning. And some say despite the CDC's claims, it is not under control at all. What's making Cyclospora outbreak so hard to stop?
Having a dead battery is scary. You're stuck, stranded, and alone. And don't connect those jumper cables wrong. That's shocking. What you need is Bullseye Safety XL, the safer, smarter jump starter. Now go from dead battery to running engine in seconds. Just connect to your car's battery. Red to red, black to black. Simple as that. And unlike jumper cables that can damage your car if you hook them up wrong, Safety XL has mistake-proof protection. No matter how you connect it, it won't spark or damage your car, guaranteed. Even if you've never jumped a car before, you can't mess this up.
With the Bullseye Safety XL, it's small, easy to use, lightweight, and I feel so independent using them.
Safety XL gives you that instant boost to start virtually any battery on the first try. Watch, we'll prove it. This battery is completely dead. Our amp meter confirms it. But when we attach Safety XL, it instantly starts. Now that's fast. The secret is a 1,000 amp boost of power delivered by our precision lithium-ion power cell directly to your battery. Safety XL can jump your car up to 10 times on a single charge. Plus, the digital meter shows exactly how much power you have left.
I've been driving for 40 years, and the Bullseye Safety XL is the best thing I've ever kept in my vehicle.
And it's not just for cars. It works on trucks, SUVs, tractors, boats, even in the snow. Plus, it features a powerful LED light and USB ports to charge your devices anywhere. Safety XL is the powerful, portable, safer charging station that fits in your glove box. Call or go online now to get Bullseye Safety XL Jump Starter for just $99.99. It comes with our 90-day money-back guarantee. Order right now and get the compact storage case absolutely free. But we're not done. We'll give you 50% off a second one, because every car in your family should have one. Plus, we'll ship your entire order free. Order now.
Call 1-800-989-3489 or go to buysafetyxl.com. So call 1-800-989-3489 or order online at buysafetyxl.com. Order now.
For years, Debbie always hid her smile. It had just become habit. The covering hand, the moment stifled. But with her new teeth from affordable dentures and implants, Debbie now beams with the power of 1,000 suns. Not a hovering hand in sight. Shine on, Debbie. Shine on. Affordable dentures and implants. That's what we do.
Your house might not be a mansion, but it still deserves a $19 pro home cleaning. Your cleaner will scrub everything from your toilet to your stovetop. Your whole place will be vacuumed and dusted. Honestly, you might think the price is too good to be true, but once you try it, you'll never go back to cleaning the house yourself. Pick a date, choose your cleaner, and book your first cleaning today for only $19.
Reports say the latest ICE crackdown will target Haitians as more than 300,000 lose their temporary protection status, or TPS, with arrests and deportations potentially starting as early as today. The Haitian Times reports officials are expecting about 1,000 deportees per month. NewsNation national correspondent Ryan Bass is live in Florida, which has some of the largest Haitian community. Ryan, what can we expect?
Yeah, Nick, nowhere is expected to feel an impact more than the state of Florida here. Today marks a pretty big turning point for hundreds of thousands of Haitians across the country because temporary protected status expires after the Supreme Court did clear the way for the Trump administration basically to end the program, which means that we're talking about roughly 300,000 people. That's about the size of, think, Orlando or Cleveland that could be in line for deportation if they don't have another path to temporary citizenship. Now, TPS, I should say, this program has been around for Haitians since 2010 and that earthquake that devastated the country, allowing them to legally live and work in the United States while Haiti recovered. Those protections have been extended several times since then. But last month, the Supreme Court cleared the way for the Trump administration to end the program. Border czar Tom Homan, he is defending the move, saying TPS was always meant to be temporary. The Trump administration argues that conditions in Haiti have improved enough to end those protections. But the State Department still considers Haiti too dangerous for Americans to travel to, saying that there is high crime and kidnappings. If ICE begins targeting Haitians who've lost temporary protected status, Florida is expected to see it more than anywhere else. More than half of Haitian TPS holders live here. Large populations also, though, are in New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Georgia, and also Indiana. We spoke with the executive director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition, who says for many families, just the fear and the uncertainty of if they will be picked up by ICE, that is enough of a punishment here, as opposed to just even staring down the options of being deported.
The threat of seeing your parents disappear overnight, the idea that the living in fear 24/7, not knowing when your turn is coming, right? Imagine, I want people to think about The Purge. If somebody has seen the movie The Purge, think about when people are just waiting for their turn to come.
Tessa says that Haiti should still qualify for the TPS program because of the country's ongoing political instability and violence that is ravaging Haiti right now. But the Senate rejected a bill that would have extended this program through 2029. Haitian officials, by the way, Nick, tell the Miami Herald that U.S. officials have told them to prepare for at least 2 flights, deportation flights, a week once those protections officially end, which is slated to be today, Nick.
And Ryan, this comes as the White House is also focusing on denaturalization.
Yeah, the Trump administration has made that a top priority as well. They're ramping up efforts to strip citizenship from people they say that never should have become U.S. citizens in the first place. The Justice Department says that it plans to file at least 250 denaturalization cases by October in what would be basically the biggest of its kind in modern American history. So far this year, just to give you some context, Nick, it's already filed nearly 90 cases. That is almost 4 times as many as during the entire Biden administration.
Ryan Bass, live for us in Florida with the latest. Ryan, thank you so much. Federal immigration officials have deported former Indianapolis Colts linebacker Daniel Adongo. ICE officials say the Kenyan-born player was deported last week after a judge ordered his removal earlier this year for overstaying his visa in 2016. That was the final year of his NFL contract. Officials say he had been arrested several times over 9 years and was convicted of criminal mischief back in 2020. The most recent charges fall under the Laken-Riley Act, which requires the detention of non-citizens who commit certain crimes. And as that new immigration crackdown gets underway, President Trump will be in Michigan today, focusing on his America First economic agenda. Mr. Trump's trip comes 8 days before Michigan's high-profile primary. But polls show voters are not sold on his handling of the economy, and it could cost Republicans control of Congress. Let's bring in our panel to help break all of this down. Republican strategist and CEO of J. Wallen Opinion Research, Justin Wallen, and Julian Epstein, Democratic strategist and former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
The president's economic messaging has not been landing with voters. In a new CBS YouGov poll, 58% say President Trump's policies have made them worse off financially. Justin, I want to start with you. Should the president change up his messaging at all?
Well, I mean, yes, but the challenge is it's difficult to see where he changes it to, because he's got 60% disapproval on the economy. It's the leading issue in some form or another. It was also the leading issue when he was elected. And what that means is, of course, as we all know, this is a resounding failure grade for the president. So it's difficult to see where does he pivot and say, no, the economy's doing well, when clearly Americans feel around the dinner table, as you know, the classic statement, that their lives are not economically better. And in many cases, they're saying their lives are economically worse. It's a very, very difficult thing to position yourself as the leader of the nation. I think he's in a very difficult spot.
And Julianne, meanwhile, a new Pew Research poll shows neither party has a clear advantage on with voters when it comes to the economy, with 37% saying they agree more with Democrats and 36% saying they agree more with Republicans. Julianne, are Democrats dropping the ball on their economic messaging?
Well, they've been dropping the ball for a long time. They never made it clear under the Biden administration what they were for, other than a big welfare state. And the welfare state is not popular. They didn't make it clear what they were for, other than intersectional identity grievance, which is also not popular. So I think the Democrats have failed on that, and they still fail today. All they seem to be is anti-Trump, and being a negative partisan really doesn't cut the cake. And that's why the Democrats are at about 25%, 26% party identification throughout the country. But Republicans, on the other hand, Trump is making the same mistake Biden made in the 2022, 2023, when he said things are going well, when in fact things are not going well. And what I would say what Trump should do is, rather than telling people that things are good when they're not feeling it, is telling people what he's going to try to do in the next 2 years to improve the economy. He has not made the case on Iran, which is part of the cause of inflation. He could make the case on it. He has not made the case on what he wants to do to improve things. So I think both parties are failing miserably.
Justin, despite growing concerns about the war in Iran and the economy here at home, the president seemed to spend the weekend sharing memes and AI-generated pictures on social media. Is his head in the game with less than 100 days until Election Day?
Well, it's always tough to kind of second guess the president. He's notoriously unpredictable, but he is now engaging. He's, you know, as you mentioned, he's flying into Michigan. I think we're going to see more and more of that. I think we're going to see more engagement throughout the midterms, perhaps even than we saw in his first term at midterms. So I think once he starts engaging, we're going to see the tenor change. We're going to see the tone change. We'll see. I mean, if he shows up and is talking about election fraud, then the disconnect between what he's prioritizing and what American voters are prioritizing is going to be pretty evident. But we'll see if he pivots.
Justin, I'm glad you said that, because the disconnected messaging is an issue. We hear that from voters. Strategic focus on past grievances, on broad national security speeches has left that party, you know, worried that leadership is ignoring day-to-day financial realities for working families. We were talking about the rise in gas prices. I can remember when Biden was president during this time, during the high prices, we were seeing those stickers everywhere. Blame Joe, you know, plastered on pumps everywhere. Where is the disconnect? Because now we're seeing that today, the average is $4.11 a gallon for gas. A week ago, it was only $4, and a month ago, it was $3.88. Everyday Americans are feeling that in their pocketbook.
Your point is well made, and Julian made an excellent point as well, that the president really is in this very awkward position that Biden was also in, to saying that the economy is doing great and pointing towards these macro indicators, which fundamentally come down to the stock market. And all that does is it increases the perceptual divide between American voters, everyday Americans, and what they perceive as the elite or in power who are doing quite well. This is true, but everyday American voters are not. And by all measures, they're sliding backwards. And that delta, that gap in between what's being told to them and what they're experiencing is the sort of thing that wins and loses elections, as we've seen.
And Julian, looking across the aisle, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer endorsed moderate Democrat Haley Stevens over the weekend in that Senate race. Early voting and voting by mail both underway in Michigan. Will Whitmer's endorsement help swing that race?
Well, I sure hope it does, because I think she is the more moderate of the two. El Sayed is an extremist. I think, and from my point of view, he's pro-terrorist, and he has very little experience in doing much of anything. And I think he's sort of just a typical influencer politician that says things for attention, but hasn't really thought policy through in a serious way. So I think part of the problem with the Democrats now is the socialism takeover is very, very unpopular. Only 10-12% of the voting public actually buys into that kind of stuff. So while it might work with some primaries for Democrats where turnout is very, very low, 10-20%, it's going to be a disaster for Democrats come the general election, I think, if that brand takes hold with party identity, party messaging. So, both sides have their problems here. I think both parties are punching below their weight for different reasons.
Justin Wallen and Julian Epstein, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Nick. Good to be with you.
Two brothers and online influencers charged with rape in the UK are fighting extradition. What's expected to happen in the courtroom today in the case of Andrew and Tristan Tate.
Honey.
You too, huh?
The COVID-19, we're not waiting. If it's COVID,
Paxlovid.
Paxlovid is an oral treatment for adults with mild to moderate COVID-19 and a high risk factor for it becoming severe. It does not prevent COVID-19.
Our symptoms are mild now, but we're not risking it.
Paxlovid must be taken within the first 5 days of symptoms and help stop the virus from multiplying in your body. Taking Paxlovid with certain medicines can lead to serious or life-threatening side effects or affect how it or other medicines work, including hormonal birth control. Tell your doctor about all medicines, vitamins, and herbal supplements you take, as certain tests or dosage changes of your other medicines may be needed. Tell them if you have kidney or liver problems, HIV-1, are or plan to be pregnant, or breastfeed. Don't take Paxlovid if allergic to its ingredients. Stop taking and call your doctor right away if you have allergic reaction symptoms. Serious side effects can include allergic reactions, some severe like anaphylaxis, and liver problems. These are not all the possible side effects, so talk to your doctor.
If it's COVID, Paxlovid.
Ask your doctor today.
Think you need a new roof? Think again. Most roofing companies only make money one way, by selling you a new roof. But what if your roof isn't worn out, just dried out? And with just a little love, you could put off an expensive roof replacement for up to 15 years, at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. RoofMax is a scientifically engineered restoration formula that brings your shingle life back to new. Scan the code and get a free roof tune-up with your RoofMax restoration.
For a limited time only, save up to 45% on iRestore.
This was me. I felt old. I did not feel like my age.
Over 80 million Americans struggle with hair loss. Introducing iRestore, the most powerful FDA-cleared red light laser hair growth device designed to safely and effectively manage hair loss and support growth naturally at home.
It has worked for me. It's like a miracle.
An independent clinical study revealed in just 4 months, over 95% of participants saw dramatic results. On average, participants saw an astounding 43.2% increase in both hair count and thickness. iRestore's Lumitech technology combines up to 500 medical-grade red light lasers and LEDs, delivering the most powerful enhanced scalp coverage available for at-home use.
It's 12 minutes a day. Each month, my hair was getting fuller and fuller. I actually have my hair back.
Order iRestore and save up to 45% for a limited time. Get free shipping and a 12-month satisfaction guarantee. Get the Revive Hair Care Kit as a free bonus.
An emergency can happen when you least expect it.
Suddenly, you're alone and unable to reach your phone. But with Life Alert, help is always within reach.
This is Life Alert. What is your emergency?
Help! I've fallen and I can't get up.
We're sending help right now.
Life Alert is the only medical alert service proven to save a life every 11 minutes. And their devices never need charging, so you stay protected. With their emergency centers located in the U.S., Life Alert gets you help fast, 24/7.
For information or a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-819-5919. That's 1-800-819-5919. For a free brochure, call now. 1-800-819-5919.
Welcome back. 40 minutes after the hour. Happening today, the attorneys for two social media influencer brothers accused of rape and sex trafficking are expected in court. Prosecutors in the United Kingdom are demanding Andrew and Tristan Tate be extradited to face new charges from 4 new accusers. That's in addition to previous allegations of luring women for sexual exploitation in Romania. The Tates have denied all charges and say their videos and comments online have been taken out of context. Brooke Schaefer is live in Miami ahead of today's hearing with the very latest. Brooke, this is a troubling case because of the details, but what can we expect in court today?
Nick, attorneys for the Tate brothers in court today are expected to continue fighting that extradition as they also argue the brothers' innocence. Andrew and Tristan Tate, as you mentioned, they face a lot of charges here now, a combined 59 criminal counts in the UK, including accusations of rape, assault, and human trafficking. Federal complaints unsealed last week revealed disturbing allegations from British authorities, including accusations from a woman who says she was put in chokeholds and raped in 2015. The Tate brothers deny those accusations. Their attorney in court in Miami last week argued this case is politically motivated.
We are, of course, objecting to extradition because Andrew and Tristan are innocent. The process is the punishment. When you drag somebody's name through the media, when you slander them, when you defame them, when you accuse them of heinous and terrible allegations, the process becomes the punishment until you can clear your name.
The polarizing social media influencers who often promote male dominance have been in federal detention in Florida since their arrest in Miami this month. We're told today's hearing could be focused on bail for the Tate brothers as the judge ultimately decides whether or not the U.S. should hand them over to the UK. Nick?
Brooke, thank you so much. For more, let's bring in trial attorney Mercedes Cohen. Mercedes, good morning. The Tate's attorney says this is political persecution. Let's take a listen.
Yep.
Yes, it's politically motivated. There's no question about it. These guys went to D.C. to exercise their First Amendment rights. They met with members of Congress as private citizens. They met with friends in Washington, D.C. They walked the grounds of the Capitol, and 3 days later, they're in the jumpsuit. You do the math.
Mercedes, the things they're alleged to have said and done are disturbing on so many levels. But is it politically motivated to you?
That's going to be a really difficult question, even for a judge to answer, because the judge is going to look, and I was a former judge, Nick, for a number of years. The judge is going to look at the evidence. They will certainly put the prosecutor to task because, as you can imagine, extradition of individuals out of the United States are incredibly not political, but complicated because you look at the various issues that need to be satisfied. Number one, what are the nature of the charges? Are these the types of charges that can be prosecuted in the United States? The answer is yes. Second part is the probable cause, which is what this hearing is going to focus in on today. Does the prosecution have enough evidence to demonstrate that there's a likelihood that the Tate brothers were involved in the criminal activity they're being accused of? That's it's not a beyond a reasonable doubt hurdle, which is obviously very difficult, and we've seen that play itself out in the criminal justice system. It's a much lower standard. Is it more likely than not that the Tate brothers were involved in the criminal activity that they're accused of? That's not a very difficult burden for the prosecution to actually satisfy. And the third part is more of an administrative step when it comes to extradition of these individuals. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has to sign off on the releasing of these individuals into the hands of the British authorities. We've already know from Marco Rubio that they are not going, that he himself is not going to be involved. The president will not be involved. The executive branch of government will not be involved. They are washing their hands of the situation and will not stop the extradition if the judge concludes that there's enough evidence to demonstrate that the Tate brothers actually engaged in this criminal activity.
So, Mercedes, to be clear, charges from other countries like Romania alone does not necessarily set the standard for what is necessary for that extradition.
Exactly right, Nick. We're looking at it from the lens of the United States, the protections that these individuals have within the confines of the United States. And so the process that's at issue here, it's not that we're looking for other countries and the way they deal with individuals that are accused of crimes. They look at the process within the process that's within the confines of the criminal justice system. So the judge will just routinely, as in any criminal charges, will look at the charges and task the prosecutor with the requirement to establish that probable cause exists.
Mercedes, does it matter where they would be extradited to? Would that weigh into the judge's decision?
Great question, Nick. You need to do, in order for a country to have a successful extradition, there has to be a treaty between the foreign country and the United States. Here we know that the United Kingdom does have that treaty with the United States. So not every single country in the world has that ability to actually extradite United States citizens out of the country, except for circumstances where the treaty exists. And that's the first step in the extradition process. And then the remaining steps unfold.
Mercedes, I have less than 15 seconds. How do you expect today to play out?
It certainly sounds overwhelming. We heard Brooke Schaefer say there are 59 charges. This is really significant. Nature of crime is obviously very disturbing. As long as the prosecution can set forth who are the individuals behind it, what are the allegations, and what involvement, if any, these individuals had, likelihood will be that the extradition will be successful and they will be removed.
Mercedes Cohen, thank you again for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Still ahead is one of the largest Cyclospora outbreaks in the United States. Thousands of people getting sick across much of the country, while some are questioning the CDC's claims that the outbreak is under control.
Wait, how long? It's not an infusion? A 1-minute injection.
1 minute.
Keytruda QLEX is a 1-minute injection for certain cancers, which refers to administration time only. Keytruda QLEX is also FDA approved to treat more types of cancer than any subcutaneous immunotherapy of its kind. One of those cancers is early-stage non-small cell lung cancer. Keytruda QLEX may be used with certain chemotherapies before surgery for adults with early-stage non-small cell lung cancer, which can be removed by surgery, and then continued alone after surgery to help prevent your lung cancer from coming back.
Do not take Keytruda QLEX if you are allergic to its ingredients. Keytruda QLEX can cause your immune system to attack healthy parts of your body during or after treatment. This may be severe and lead to death. See your doctor right away if you have cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, diarrhea, severe stomach pain, nausea or vomiting, headache, eye problems, irregular heartbeat, extreme tiredness, constipation, dizziness or fainting, changes in appetite, thirst or urine, confusion, memory problems, persistent or severe muscle pain or weakness, muscle cramps, fever, rash, itching or flushing. There may be other side effects. Tell your doctor about all medical conditions, including immune or nervous system problems, such as Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, lupus, or myasthenia gravis, or Guillain-Barré syndrome, an organ, tissue, or stem cell transplant, or receive chest radiation. Keytruda QLEX can harm your unborn baby.
Your day, your time, your treatment. It's true. Keytruda QLEX. Ask your doctor if a 1-minute injection with Keytruda QLEX is right for your cancer.
She's been there for you through everything. And now you're learning this next thing together. We get it. Find a caregiver who does too. Join now for 20% off care.com.
Lights on.
I didn't understand you.
Lights on. Morning.
Hello.
I'm so tired of being alone. Black coffee, no sugar.
Enjoy coffee.
Instead of building new ways for machines to talk to people, Chase is building new places for people to talk to people.
Hi, welcome in.
Hi.
with tech that's actually helpful and 5,000 branches in 48 states. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring. Understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
At least SafeLight can come to you for free.
They can come to me for free?
That's right. SafeLight can come to you for free, so you can get your windshield fixed anywhere you want at no additional cost. For free mobile service, go to safelight.com.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace.
I wish I loved my smile.
I wish I could get implants.
I wish money wasn't so tight.
I wish I can justify the cost.
I wish my insurance could save me more on dental implants.
See what it can do at ClearChoice. Show us your insurance card and save $5,000 on fixed full double arch implants. That's insurance assurance on a smile that's built for life. Schedule your free consultation today.
Barrett hasn't taken a bite like that in years. Before getting his new teeth from affordable dentures and implants, he could only watch with envy as his friends munched those salty little triangles. But now, that crispy bite he's been dreaming about, it's back. Crunch away, Barrett. You deserve it. Affordable dentures and implants. That's what we do.
New this morning, a former commissioner for the Food and Drug Administration says the nation's Cyclospora outbreak is not under control. The CDC says it has received reports of more than 4,000 lab-confirmed cases in 41 states since May 1st. And there are outbreak clusters in 9 additional states. At least 300 people have been hospitalized, with Michigan being the hardest hit.
Yeah, it's no fun right now, I can tell you that. And I'm exhausted. I have lupus, so I'm on a bunch of medications for that. And so sometimes my stomach acts up, and then I realize, no, this wasn't just a normal stomach upset.
The parasite has been linked to contaminated lettuce. Now, Taylor Farms has recalled its iceberg lettuce sourced from central Mexico and temporarily shut down its plant located there. The FDA is urging the public to avoid all products listed in Taylor Farms' recall. Joining me now is Dr. Frida Fisher, internist and nephrologist. She's the president and founder of Midtown Atlanta Nephrology. Dr. Frida, good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Frida, we heard that woman in the soundbite talk about that she has lupus. My question to you is she and others who may have a compromised immune system at higher risk because of the Cyclospora outbreak?
Absolutely, Nick. Patients who are immunocompromised are at higher risk in general for infections. So when I say immunocompromised, I mean if you are an infant who is very young, if you're someone who's older than the age of 65, if you're on chemotherapy, such as cancer patients, or if you have autoimmune diseases such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, sarcoidosis. This means that your immune system does not do the standard work that the average person's immune system does. So if you are exposed to a parasite like Cyclospora, you are typically more likely to actually get the illness.
Dr. Frida, you see all over the internet, people are afraid to eat lettuce and other products. How worried should Americans actually be? I'm among those who buy the bagged lettuce that says triple washed, ready to eat, and I throw it right into a bowl because I'm thinking that cuts down on time. Am I making a mistake or am I following the right thing to do?
Well, for right now, we need to control what we can control. And one thing that's being recommended is that as for now, that we avoid bagged lettuce, specifically the bagged lettuce that's been named in this recall, the Taylor Farms iceberg shredded lettuce in those 9 states of Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and now Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. Here's what we do recommend. If you're going to eat lettuce, and we do want you to eat lettuce, purchase it preferably from someplace that's locally farmed. But if you purchase it from a grocery store, that's fine also. But remove all of those external leaves, like the first 1 or 2 layers, and then wash each individual leaf very carefully. Make sure that you wash all of your produce. Make sure you do good hand washing, good hand hygiene, and pay attention to the actual recalls and to the states that are under surveillance. Other than that, I don't want people to freak out because the good news is that even though we have at least 308 hospitalizations, there have been no reported deaths, and people usually live with a Cyclospora infection, even if they are immunocompromised.
With 4,100 confirmed cases and 7,400 under investigation, this is one of the largest outbreaks ever in the U.S. from Cyclospora. From your perspective, Dr. Frida, what makes this outbreak different from others?
It's different because it's much greater than the ones of the past. We do get Cyclospora season, you may call it, anywhere from May 1st to August, where we know that we have Cyclospora coming. However, in the past, we've had a surveillance, specifically the Food Net, which is a federally run surveillance program that involves the FDA, USDA, and CDC. Well, with the recent cuts and with the current administration, as of July 2025, prior to that, we would have 8 pathogens under surveillance, including screwworms, including Cyclospora. But now, states are no longer mandated to report these infections, which unfortunately has put us behind. But now it's all hands on deck. And I'm trusting that the FDA, the CDC, our federal government will now go ahead and work to make sure that we get this current outbreak under control. As for now, it is not under control.
Dr. Frida Fisher, I want to thank you again. Also, we will remember that good hand hygiene that you mentioned as well. Dr. Frida, thank you.
My pleasure.
Let's take a live look at the White House. President Trump is getting ready to head to Michigan. The message he's taking to the battleground state as Democrats step up their fight in a key Senate primary.